You have convinced yourself you are bad with money. Maybe it happened slowly. Maybe it was the month the account hit zero for days before payday and you sat in your car in a parking lot doing math on your phone. Maybe it was the credit card balance that seemed to move slower than it should. Maybe it was watching someone your age talk about their investment portfolio at a dinner party while you nodded and hoped nobody asked about yours. Somewhere along the way, you decided the verdict was in. You are not a money person. Other people are money people. You are the one who figures it out eventually. Maybe. Hopefully. Here is what I need you to hear right now, before anything else in this video. That story you are telling yourself is almost certainly wrong. Not partially wrong. Fundamentally wrong. The people who are genuinely bad with money do not worry about being bad with money. They do not watch videos like this. They do not lie awake thinking about whether they are on track. The fact that you are here, paying attention, taking this seriously enough to click on a video about your financial habits, is itself evidence that the verdict you handed yourself is not accurate, and I am going to show you 10 specific signs that prove it, not the obvious ones, the real ones, the ones that separate people who will quietly build wealth from people who never will, and that most people who have these signs do not even recognize as signs. My name is Sig, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, the psychology of financial behavior, and why so many people who are genuinely doing the right things feel terrible about their finances, while people making objectively destructive decisions feel completely fine. Subscribe to this channel right now if you want honest conversations about money that are built on what the data actually shows about financial behavior, and give this video a thumbs up if by the end of it you feel something shift in how you see your own situation. Let's get into the 10 signs. This one is going to surprise you because guilt sounds like a bad thing. Nobody wants to feel guilty. But here is the financial reality of what guilt means in this context. Guilt is feedback. It is your financial value system working correctly. It is the internal signal that says the decision you just made is not aligned with the future you are trying to build. The people who are genuinely bad with money do not feel guilty when they overspend. They feel justified. They feel like they earned it. They feel like they deserve a treat, a reward, an exception to their own rules. Every single time. The guilt you feel when you buy something you shouldn't have is not evidence of financial failure. It is evidence of financial awareness. It is proof that you have a standard you care about meeting. The person with no financial guilt has no financial standard. They are not happier about their spending. They are just less aware of where it is taking them. Your guilt is working. The question is not how to eliminate it. The question is how to let it guide you before the purchase instead of after it. This sounds almost too simple to be meaningful. But stay with me, because the research on this specific behavior is genuinely striking. A survey by the National Foundation for Credit Counseling found that only 39% of Americans could state their account balance within $100 without looking. 61% had no clear sense of what they currently had available. People who are good with money carry a running mental model of their financial position, not a precise number, a rough one. They know if they are in a strong month or a thin one. They know if a large purchase is comfortable right now or would create pressure. This awareness does not require a spreadsheet or a budgeting app. It is simply the result of paying enough attention to your money over a long enough period that the picture stays generally clear in your head. If you are someone who roughly knows what is in your account, who can tell whether a $500 expense is fine right now or not without opening your banking app first, you are in the top 40% of Americans by financial awareness. That is not a small thing. This one matters more than almost any other sign on this list, and here is why. The ability to delay a purchase is not a budgeting skill. It is a psychological skill called delayed gratification, and it is the single strongest behavioral predictor of long-term financial success that researchers have identified. More predictive than income, more predictive than financial education, more predictive than investment knowledge. If you have ever put something back on the shelf, closed a browser tab with something in your cart, told yourself not yet on a purchase you genuinely wanted, you are demonstrating the exact psychological capacity that builds wealth over time. The people who struggle financially most severely, almost universally people who cannot create space between wanting something and acting on that want. The want arrives and the purchase follows immediately. If you have even occasionally interrupted that sequence, even if you eventually bought the thing anyway, you are exercising a financial muscle that most people have not developed. The fact that you have it at all means you can strengthen it, and strengthening it is worth more to your financial future than any investment strategy or budgeting system ever could be. This sign is one that financially sophisticated people almost universally share, and that almost never gets mentioned in conversations about good financial habits because it sounds too basic to be significant. Never missing a payment deadline is not basic. It is a behavioral achievement that requires consistent attention, organized thinking, and a financial system stable enough that the money to make payments actually exists when the payment is due. Late fees are not just a minor annoyance. They are the financial system's tax on disorganization and cash flow instability. A $30 late fee on a credit card once a month is $360 per year gone for nothing. Multiple accounts, multiple late fees, and you are spending hundreds to thousands of dollars annually on penalties that produce zero value for you. The person who has not paid a late fee in a year has a functional system. Their payments are automated, or they are organized enough to make them manually before deadlines. Their accounts have enough cash flow that the payment is always possible when it is due. That combination of organization and stability is worth naming and recognizing because it is not universal and it is not trivial. Here is the sign that separates the people who will quietly accumulate wealth from the people who will earn good incomes and end up with nothing to show for them. When you consider a large purchase, does a version of your future self show up in the decision? Not every time, not for every small expense, but for significant ones. Does something in you pause and consider what that money could become if it went somewhere else instead? Does the question of opportunity cost come up, even in a vague intuitive way, before you commit to the spend? This is not anxiety. It is not miserly thinking. It is the fundamental cognitive behavior that connects present decisions to future outcomes. The person who never thinks about their future self when they spend is not making present tense decisions. They are making decisions with no timeline at all. They experience the want and they satisfy it, and the cycle repeats indefinitely without any progress toward a different financial reality. If you are someone who has ever looked at an expensive purchase and thought about what it would become invested over 10 years instead, you have the mental wiring that wealth building requires. Most people do not have it naturally. You either developed it or you were shown it early. Either way, it is a genuine financial advantage. We are halfway through, and I want to say something before we get into the second half. The signs I have covered so far are behavioral. They are things you do or do not do, feel or do not feel. The signs coming up are more situational. They are things that are true about your financial life right now that you may not have recognized as evidence of financial competence because they look ordinary from the inside. They are not ordinary. They are the specific structural conditions that separate people who are building financial stability from people who are sliding away from it without knowing it. Pay attention to these because some of them are going to hit differently than the first 5. I mean this completely literally. If you have any amount of money in a savings account right now, you are doing better than a significant percentage of your peers. The Federal Reserve's most recent report on the economic well-being of American households found that 37% of Americans could not cover a $400 emergency expense with cash or its equivalent, not a $4,000 emergency. $400, 37%. If you have more than $400 in savings, you are ahead of more than a third of American adults. If you have $1,000, you are ahead of a majority. If you have 3 months of expenses saved, you are in the top 25 to 30% of Americans by emergency fund status. None of this is about being comfortable with where you are. It is about accurately understanding where you stand relative to reality instead of relative to a highlight reel of other people's finances that was never an honest picture to begin with. This one almost nobody mentions, and it might be the most revealing sign of genuine financial maturity on this entire list. Have you had a conversation in the last 12 months that was uncomfortable specifically because it involved money? Telling a friend you cannot afford the trip they are planning, asking your employer for a raise and experiencing the discomfort of that ask, sitting down with a partner and talking about finances honestly rather than avoiding the subject, calling a creditor to negotiate a rate or a payment plan. The people who are genuinely bad with money avoid every one of these conversations. They say yes to the trip and put it on a credit card. They accept whatever salary they are offered without negotiating. They let financial tensions in relationships build silently rather than creating the discomfort of naming them. The willingness to have uncomfortable money conversations is one of the most reliable indicators of financial health because these conversations are where the most important financial decisions actually get made. Every conversation you have had that was uncomfortable because money was involved is evidence that you are willing to engage with your financial reality even when engaging with it is hard. That willingness is rare, it is valuable, and it compounds over time in ways that avoidance never can. Not enough. Something. Because here is the reality of where most Americans are. 28% of American adults have zero retirement savings. Not a small amount, zero. An additional large segment has less than $10,000 saved for retirement regardless of age. If you are contributing anything to a 401k, an IRA, a pension, or any retirement vehicle at all, you are in a better position than a staggeringly large percentage of the population that has decided either consciously or by default that retirement is a problem for future them to figure out. I am not telling you that what you are currently contributing is enough. For most people it is not, and we have covered that in previous videos in detail. What I am telling you is that the behavior of contributing at all, consistently, even imperfectly, is the behavior that compounds into something real over time. The person who contributes 3% of their salary for 40 years ends up with something. The person who contributes 0% for 40 years ends up entirely dependent on Social Security and whatever their family can provide. 3% is not enough, but it is infinitely more than zero, and recognizing that you are already in the game, even if not yet playing it at the right level, is the accurate starting point for improvement. This sign is the one I want you to think about most carefully because it requires honest self-reflection rather than a simple yes or no. In the last 6 months, have you made any financial decision, any at all, that prioritized a future outcome over a present desire? Did you put money into savings instead of spending it on something you wanted? Did you pay extra toward a debt instead of using that money for something more immediately enjoyable? Did you choose the less expensive option on something significant specifically because you were thinking about where the money difference could go instead? Did you skip something, delay something, or choose differently than pure present preference would have dictated because your future self had a vote in the decision? If the answer to any of these is yes, you are demonstrating long-term financial thinking, which sounds obvious until you realize how rare it is in practice. Most financial decisions most people make most of the time are made entirely in the present tense. What do I want right now? What can I technically afford right now? What will feel good right now? The person who asks any version of what does this cost my future self before making a significant financial decision is operating in a completely different financial cognitive framework than the majority of people around them. I saved this one for last because I wanted to land with the full weight it deserves. The single most reliable predictor of better financial outcomes is not income. It is not investment knowledge. It is not even current savings rate. It is financial engagement, the behavior of actively seeking information about money, caring enough about your financial future to spend time understanding it, taking the subject seriously enough to watch a 10-minute or 20-minute or 30-minute video about it when you could be watching literally anything else. Research from the FINRA Investor Education Foundation found that people who seek out financial information and education consistently outperform their income peers on every measure of financial health, including savings rate, debt levels, investment returns, and retirement readiness. Not because the information itself is magic, because the act of seeking it reflects a relationship with money that is fundamentally oriented toward improvement. You clicked on this video. You have watched it to the end. You took the time to engage with your own financial situation seriously enough to do that. That is not nothing. That is not a small thing dressed up as a large one. That is the foundational behavior that every genuinely financially competent person shares. They pay attention. They take it seriously. They keep learning. The difference between where you are right now and where you want to be is not intelligence or luck or a secret you have not discovered yet. It is time. Apply to the behaviors you already have in some form, and that this video hopefully helped you see more clearly. You came into this video having already decided something about yourself and your relationship with money. I hope the last 20 minutes gave you enough evidence to reconsider that verdict, not to become complacent, not to stop trying to improve, but to recalibrate the starting point of your self-assessment from someone who is bad with money to someone who is further along than they realized, with specific behaviors already in place that will compound quietly over time into something real. The people who build genuine wealth are not the people who are perfect with money from the beginning. They are the people who felt the guilt, delayed the purchase, had the uncomfortable conversation, contributed to retirement even when the amount felt embarrassingly small, and kept showing up to learn more even when progress felt invisible. That is you. It has been you. The only question now is what you do with that recognition.